This is Bam Electric Ghost, and we're live with Ray Hartjen. You're a writer, musician, and cancer patient advocate. How you doing tonight?
I'm doing fantastic. How are you doing today?
I'm doing pretty good myself. I'm actually going through. I'm a cancer survivor myself, age 27. I had a level 3 sarcoma, and my wife is actually going through multiple myeloma right now.
Oh, I am sorry to hear on both accounts. Congratulations on your continued fight against with sarcoma. And hey, your wife
Yes.
and I we're in the same club. Neither one of us wanted to join that club, but
Yeah.
that's what threw us. So when was your wife diagnosed?
She had multiple surgeries a couple of years ago, and the level of multiple myeloma, it's not smoldering, but it's smoldering, and it's not multiple, but she's on the scale where she's like her numbers are coming back, where
Yeah.
they put her on the immunotherapy with a lot of different kind of steroid type medicine for now, because they did a bone marrow check, and then it did some blood test, MRI, and then her numbers started creeping in the wrong direction. So now she's on a preventative therapy. She's not totally full blown, but she's not out of the woods. She was like in a remission and sleep, creeping back a little bit.
Yeah, by all means, if she ever wants to, like reach out and talk to me, actually anybody in your audience, wants to reach out and talk to me about anything, but particularly about cancer, and very specifically if it's around multiple myeloma, please have her feel free to get a hold of me. My contact information is in the book, and I can be found at Ray Hartjen on all social platforms. Keith, it's been one of the honors of my life, actually, in the last handful of years to be of service to the patient community. Yeah. And, it's, leading Heart Center, Heart Forward, and being a service. It's been, like I said, very rewarding. It's been an honor. Just this last couple of weeks, I've connected with a handful of patients in Iran, of all places.
Oh, wow.
I've had patients reach out to me through various social channels from New Zealand and South Africa, Eastern Europe, and it's been great. So I enjoy speaking with patients, sharing with them a little bit about my story, and also understanding their story and seeing what we can do to help each other. We all get something, right? And it takes a village. What can we do to help each other get through this?
Well, I think it's interesting. You wear a lot of hats, and I think my family is the same way. We're all creative. My wife is a disability advocate. She's a playwright. She's an artist herself. My daughter's a graphic artist, and they run basically an organization that helps disabled artists, and they do virtual galleries for disabled artists around the world and
That's
get
fantastic.
their art to be able to present it. So, and I wear a lot of hats myself. Software design, podcasting, and music production. So we're kind of all in the same space. Based on your background, I can see all the guitars behind you, and you've been involved in a lot of things. So I don't know where you want to start your journey, because you're a writer, you're a songwriter, you're an advocate, and you've been in business. So where do you want to start with your story?
Yeah, I think the place that I wanted to speak with you the most in your audience today is taking a step back. All of us taking a step back to the way we were when we were children, right? And Keith, we had this this wonderment of learning. We didn't go out maybe consciously thinking that, hey, today I'm going to learn. We were just amazed by all the learning opportunities in front of us, right? And, we had this beginner's attitude, right? So you see something, you didn't understand it, you dug into it a little bit more, and just always fascinated with learning. As we grow older, we kind of forget those types of things. We've been there, we've done that, we've seen it. I know the business knows me, and that type of thing. Where you lose that beginner's attitude, but we have this fancy word for it. It's called growth mindset, right? And sometimes as we, go along in our professional careers, or as we develop, personally, we think about this growth mindset that we might have, when really it's kind of the beginner's attitude. It's acting like a child again. It's being curious and being in wonder of learning things. And one of the things that I like to talk about with folks, particularly with new cancer patients, and it's something I learned from my cancer patient support group, that is, life is filled with opportunities, is filled with challenges and obstacles, and things that get in our way. And it's when you develop a cancer diagnosis, certainly there's a tendency to think about what all the things cancer takes away from your life, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's there where I like to challenge patients to think about, well, what about what cancer gives you to your life?
Yeah.
Right. And a lot of times, actually, it's not just a cancer patient. I want everybody in the audience to think about it. When the obstacles present themselves in your path,
it's an opportunity.
Yeah. What are they giving you? Right.
Yeah.
And when I first got diagnosed with cancer, I just approached cancer the way that I approached everything in my life. And it was very oriented on some sort of deliverable. So if it's as a musician, it's like a gig, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or a recording date, working my way toward that one thing. If it was at work, it was the presentation of a deliverable or a report. Academically, it would be taking an exam. If it was as an athlete, it would be a game or a race or something like that. And it's kind of like a training camp, getting up to fight night, right? And after 2 weeks, I was exhausted, man. I was beat up and exhausted because multiple myeloma is an incurable cancer. It's treatable, but it's incurable. It's not a singular event. It is a process. It's not one. Yeah, it's not one game day. Every day is game day.
Every day is game day.
Yeah. And I was sitting down with my son and my wife at dinner. My daughter was off to college, and I was exhausted after 2 weeks of being a cancer patient and putting my best. I knew cancer was going to give me its best, so I was going to, in turn, give it my best, right? And I was just exhausted. And that's when I began to think about my journey with cancer, what I like to consider my fight with cancer, with a bit of a growth mindset. I had to change my approach, and I began to understand, like as a musician, you look at a mixing board and you see all these levels. For me, as my whole being, it was my physical being and my mental being and my emotional being and my spiritual
all the pillars. Being. Yeah, all the pillars.
Yes, those foundational pillars. And if one of those is lagging, how can I use one or more of the others to pull it up? Or if maybe all of them are lagging, how can I just use one and kind of begin to pull it up and
bring it
get
back.
me to feeling better? Yeah. So, I began to realize, just a couple of weeks into my fight that how about approaching a growth mindset on what my health has given, and seeing what can it add. When I was diagnosed in March of 2019, I had a lot of roles. I was a husband, a father, a son, a brother, a teammate, a bandmate, a boss, an employee, all these roles. Yeah. Wore a lot of different hats, just like you and your wife and just like everybody listening, right? But, associated with each one of those roles, I also had accountabilities. And with those accountabilities linked to them were goals and objectives. You know what? And that was all prior to my diagnosis, March 11th, 2019. And it came to realize, as I thought about cancer in a sense of loss. March 12th, 2019, I had all those same roles. Each and every one of them, I was still there. I was still a husband, still a father, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I still had those roles, those accountabilities, those goals and objectives. But over time, I've added to it because of cancer. Now I'm a cancer patient advocate. Now I'm an advocate for caregivers. I'm a fundraiser for cancer organizations and patient organizations. Those are all things that have been added, roles that cancer has given me, allowed me to add back into my life. With those, of course, just like my other roles, I have accountabilities, I have goals, I have objectives. It's kind of approaching things from a growth mindset. And there's one more thing I'd just like to add to this whole growth mindset talk. And it's an exercise I facilitated, probably to a couple hundred people over the course of my professional career. It's I was facilitating at a time a time management training course from the people from Franklin Covey, Stephen Covey, the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People author, and of course the Franklin company, Franklin Planner. They merged together and put together these great courses. And during my professional career, I've had the privilege to be able to facilitate these courses. And there's an exercise in those time management classes. It's a simple timeline exercise. So I'd like to ask you and also the audience, just kind of follow along. You don't need a piece of paper and a pen. If you do, that's great. But you can just, use your mental chalkboard, if you will, and just draw a horizontal line from left to right. And on that horizontal line at the far left-hand side, make a little vertical tick mark. And on the right-hand side, make a little vertical tick mark. So there you have a line, 2 tick marks. The left-hand side represents your birth. The right-hand side represents your death. Now, the introspective part of the exercise is, right now, where do you believe you are on your timeline? And I know tomorrow's not promised for any of us, and we don't know what the future might hold, but where do you believe? Where do you think you are? Now, Keith, for me, when I was facilitating this, I would kind of casually just throw my tick mark in the middle. First of all, I was going to live forever. And if something happened and I wasn't going to live forever, I was certainly going to live to be like 100 or so, right? My diagnosis of multiple myeloma, when I revisited this as part of my idea of attacking this with a growth mindset, I recognized and had to admit to myself that my tick mark now is much further to the right than what I probably thought I was.
Yeah.
Right. So I started thinking about that. It's like, wow, I've got maybe less time on my timeline than I thought. Knowing that the future is uncertain, it kind of dawned on me. I was able to articulate in my mind that like many of humans, I took time for granted. I took all tomorrows for granted. And with that, usually next week, some next month, a little bit of next year. And depending on the topic of conversation, I could take next decades for granted, right? And how that manifested itself with me is that I took people and relationships for granted as well. For example, like I have this dear friend, Keith, over on the East Coast, and I'm thinking about him, but I'll just reach out to him tomorrow. I'll give him a call tomorrow or shoot him an email, maybe next week. Keith's going to be there. I'm going to be here. What does it really, we'll get to it. Right. So, it began to dawned on me. It's like, what are the perils of taking time for granted? One, I am guilty of having a bunch of one day I am going to ... all these things I want to do, but one day I'm going to do it. Right.
Yeah.
Then it's then it's the people I want to do it with. Right. What do I want to do and who do I want to do it with? Who are the people I love the most and respect the most and admire the most? Those are the people I want to surround myself with, and the people I love and doing the things that I want to do. Now, as a musical artist, it's always great to be able to expand the amount of money you get per gig, right? You always want to get a little higher dollar mark, right? One way is merch, and it's the t-shirt, right? And so I'm always
this one.
Yes, I'm always on the lookout for a cool little phrase to put on the back of a t-shirt so I can get a few extra bucks at the gig, right? And so, thinking of this timeline exercise, it was a simple one for me. If not now, when? If not now, when? And that has helped me redirect my life, adopting that type of motto, to get more accomplished with the people I want to do things with. A good example will be my first book. It's called Immaculate, How the Steelers Saved Pittsburgh. I'm a co-writer with it with a good friend of mine, Tom Olenek. And Tom is a yinzer. That's what you call the folk from Pittsburgh. He's a yinzer. I'm not the yinzer. He's the yinzer. But he's a biotech executive. He's not a writer. I'm the writer. For a couple of decades, he kept talking about this idea of a book. It would make a great book. How when the city of Pittsburgh faced its deindustrialization transformation, they struggled and they needed to, what got them through were their heroes. And at the time, it was their unlikely heroes. The first 39 years of their existence, the Steelers were horrible. But when they needed the heroes, all of a sudden the Steelers were
stepped up.
Yeah, all of a sudden they were there, and they were built in the image of the city. They were tough, hard nosed, gritty, blue collar, bring your lunch pail to work, take a shower after work, not before work type of football team. Just like all the people involved in the steel industry, right? So, thinking about the if not now, when, after about the 1 millionth time I heard Tom talk about this book and wouldn't it make a great book, I grabbed him by the shoulders and said, Tom, if not now, when?
Just do it.
let's start it, right? We can't finish it if we don't get started. Let's get started and see where it goes. Next thing you know, a year and a half later, we have a book. If not now, when it's helped me publish 3 books. I have a 4th coming out in May, and it's allowed me to be that cancer patient advocate. It's allowed me to network with people around the world, for a mutually beneficial relationship and engagement, and with it, it's led me to another motto, and that is, punch today in the face.
Do you feel that your cancer actually motivated you to be less of a procrastinator or more of a doer?
Much more of a doer. We don't know what tomorrow brings, right? But I do know I have today. And so this new motto of punch today in the face is, I want to let today know that I was here. And if you've ever been punched in the face, that's one way that you get your attention pretty quickly, right? So, hey, I want today to know that I was there. At the end of the day, I want to look back at the day and say, I used you up. And I want to look at tomorrow and say, tomorrow, I'm coming for you next, right? And that is because we have a gift. Today is a gift, and intellectually, we know that not everyone received today as a gift, right? Mm-hmm. So how do we honor them? How do we honor the day itself? And how do we honor ourselves with this gift of today? Let's use it up. Let's make the most of it.
Yeah, I feel as a creative person, I try to write like something every day, right? Mm-hmm. And I have a software job where I design. So it's like left, right, brain. So I do a lot of design work. That pays for my Moogs and my Rolands and all my gear. Yeah. And then I can do whatever I want musically because I've got a pretty good day job. I'm not a starving artist. So then I can write the kind of music I want. I can be I don't have somebody tell me, oh, that's not going to work. I can go as experimental as I want to. And, I recently put out a single and I got a really good review where they basically figured out that I like to do very experimental jazz, progressive, kind of cutting edge stuff. That's not going to be the most popular song of the day, but people would recognize that I put a lot of work into it. And so that's satisfying to me because I just love to play. Since I was 17, been playing keyboards. Yeah. And if you can do it because you love it, not because of what it's gonna supposedly do for you, but if when you put it out in the world, then people find you. It's like law of attraction. Yeah. People, your tribe, the tribe finds you.
That's right. And it's whatever you're passionate about, right? All you out there, listening and watching, what's the thing that you want to do? What are you guilty of saying, one day I'm going to ... What about that ... And sometimes it's staggering, the amount of effort that you think might be put into it. It's like, oh, wow, I would love to write a book, but I don't have the time, right? Like, how am I going to create, a couple 100,000 words? Well, first of all, I got something to tell you. Nobody writes a couple 100,000 word books anymore. I learned that quickly with the Immaculate, the first book, is that, we went to our publisher and it's 133,000 words. Like, oh, that's a lot. And I'm like, what do you mean? I actually held up a copy of Tolstoy's War and Peace, right? And I said, this book is over 1,000 pages long. He goes, you know what? Nobody buys War and Peace anymore. You want a book to be about 80,000 words. Well, there's no way Immaculate was going to go on a diet from 133,000 to 85 or whatever. It did get cut down to 130,000 words. But, one thing I wanted to tell you is that when, if you're out there and you're procrastinating a little bit because you're looking at the expanse that you might have to do, take a step back. You'll never approach the finish if you don't start. It's not about finishing what you're doing. Get started, right? When you've got a melody going through your head or something like that, get it down. Get that little bit. You don't know which bit it might be. It might be the intro. It might be the outro. It might be a chorus. You don't know yet.
Record everything. I mean, my technique is kind of like Zappa. Zappa just used to record everything.
Yeah.
And like Neil Young. And so I'm in my bedroom studio and I got multiple multi-tracks everywhere. And my whole thing's wired up. And anytime I can jump on my piano and boom, it's already recording whatever I'm doing. So you never know, like in a rehearsal, what the gem might be, what the nugget might be. And what would tend to do, and I've talked to a lot of writers, is like you put out this big, like, effort. You go into like flow state, and then you go back, you look at it, and you find the nuggets, and you start stringing them together.
That's right.
And sometimes the things actually you could actually be working for an hour. The last 5 minutes, the song comes together. And I've done a lot of things where like I was working on an idea, then I started to see it. Then the last 5 minutes, I finally synthesized it. So the last 5 minutes of an hour-long tape is the song. The song's at and then I can just pull it out.
Yeah.
I finally figured out what was working.
And
But
there's
it
really,
takes time.
I think, it takes time. And I think what's interesting about it, I think we both have a similar type of creative processes when it comes to music in particular, is that, sometimes you've got a little hook in your head and, you've developed maybe a chorus of a song and you start there and build up the rest of it around. Or other times it's, a title, like this would be a cool song title. It's something that just comes up in your head and you create from there. Sometimes it's the music that drives the lyrics for me. Sometimes it's the lyrics that drives the music. Sometimes I start at, the very beginning of the first verse. Sometimes I start with the chorus, work my way to a bridge, another chorus, and then like, how do I filter the rest of this in?
Yeah, whatever serves the song. Because a lot of people ask you, like, well, do you use a voice memo? Do you use a multi-track? Do you use the DAW? Do you use this, that? A lot of times I'm just on my Moog.
Yeah.
Is coming up with sound design, right? Spending time just actually coming up with the tone.
Yeah.
And then once I come up with the tone, then I'd be playing with all my drum machines and my drum sets. And it's like, oh, I'm going to say, it's like, does the song deserve like an 808? Do I actually need to get on the kit? So some songs I could do with an 808 or 909 or whatever, or CR78, or sometimes I actually jump on a kit because it needs a real drum. And it kind of depends on where my head's at. Like, what am I trying to do? And so you never know where the song's going to come from. It's like wherever your head's at. Like, if I'm in this kind of mood where I'm trying to do some kind of Sun Ra experimentation, or I'm doing Velvet Underground type stuff, or I'm doing Funkadelic inspired stuff, it's like wherever my head's at is wherever it's going to be.
Yeah, for the last maybe 7 or 8 years, I've been my guitar playing has been primarily acoustic guitar playing. So I'm less of a tone chaser than I was as a younger guitarist. Where constantly messing and trying to find that right tone. Now, maybe it's a difference in strings and a timbre, a different type of acoustic guitar I'm playing. But same thing with me. If I'm playing guitar, I'll try to capture it very quickly on my Zoom here. If it's, sometimes it's, it's a voice memo really fast with but then a lot of times my computer's almost always up and running.
Yeah.
Just running through a Google document really quick and throwing it out, maybe throwing a lyric out. So that tends to be where I store my lyrics.
Words.
And then whatever I might be throwing around and I, what it's like, just warming up, on the guitar, we call it noodling. I don't know what you might call it on the keyboard.
The piano's the same thing. Because a lot of times, if you're a piano player, it's the same thing as acoustic. Like I have my piano like under here, and here's my mic, and I got my recorder on the other side. I got like a multi-track, so I just hit the multi-track and start playing chords. And a lot of times, when you just run in chords, run in different arrangements, and then suddenly like, oh, I got this idea. So I'll start I might even hum it. Might have, and I might have a couple of phrases, and then it will start to kind of evolve. And it's like, whether I keep that vocal or not, it's just kind of like it's just a scratch track.
Yeah.
Just to kind of give me a guide, like, here's where I'm kind of going. And I can always, throw it, get rid of it, or knock it down, or move it into a different place. But it's kind of a scratch pad. And I feel like it's useful to have that mic there at the piano. Yeah. So I can capture whatever I'm noodling at.
And I love those placeholders. I love the stories. Recently I read that, Paul McCartney noodling around writing yesterday. The original placeholder lyrics was scrambled eggs. I really like your legs or something like that. And I'm like,
I mean, Tom Petty was famous for this kind of scat and stuff.
Yeah.
And then saying like, well, I don't know if I'm going to keep that. And it's like, oh yeah, I will. Because sometimes the losers get lucky. Sometimes he just kind of threw it out. I saw a session where he's like, he didn't really know what he was going to say. He was kind of humming it, and then it just came. And they said, wow, where'd you get that? I said, well, it just came. And it's like, well, that's what happens. And that's why you get the tape rolling. You don't know.
It's funny you mentioned Tom Petty. For the last couple of hours, I've had Learning to Fly in my head. So we got something going here, man. So
Petty's awesome. I mean, like I'm just a child of the '70s.
mhm.
Dylan, Zappa, Motown, Stax, like everything. Like I'm kind of all over the map, from Johnny Cash to Johnny Lydon. Like I anything that's good, I don't care what genre it is. If it's interesting and it got a real and critics looked at it, then I'll look at it to find what's in it that I can understand. And
Yeah.
I think that makes you a broader musician if you're willing to be more expansive.
Mhm.
Because like you think about the purist that said that, oh, fusion was terrible because
Yeah.
Miles Davis was like a king of bebop, and why is he going into fusion? They're like, oh, he's like a Judas, he's messing it up. It's like, no, it's like sometimes you want to go there.
And Keith, you bring up something, you talked about being a better musician, because you're just open to things. As people, we can be better people by being open to things. We as a society have become so dependent on technology and the algorithms that they throw stuff at us. You start clicking on news stories and they start giving you news
what you
stories
want. Yeah, give you what you
based
want.
on what they think you want, which is the stuff that you click on, right? And so,
Yeah.
it's good for us as individuals and as a society collectively to get away from our usual clicks and go out and try to see a different perspective.
Yeah,
on
get
things.
outside the norm. Well, get out the box.
My wife, she had an aunt, and I really enjoyed speaking to this woman when she was alive. Every year, she would subscribe to 5 different magazines that were kind of like off her beaten path. This was back when people used to read magazines, right? So her Aunt Catherine would get these, magazines, some of them monthly, some of them weekly, but there would be stuff that she wouldn't ordinarily read.
Yeah.
For example,
if she wasn't reading Atlantic, she'd get it.
Yeah, New Yorker. I remember once it was the Rolling Stone. Here was this 85-year-old woman reading Rolling Stone magazine, just to be aware. What are other people writing and reading and listening to and watching and things like that. And going back to what we talked about earlier in that growth mindset, approach things with a bit of a beginner's attitude, and then having that open mind to be able to I get in the habit of listening. I'm a child of the 70s as well. I was born in 1964, but the music that really floats my boat is hair metal, LA hair metal.
Hair metal, you like that?
Oh yeah,
Guns N' Roses and all those guys. Like,
yeah,
they're a little bit more traditional than most of the hair metal. But
my musical, inspiration, Eddie Van Halen. Oh, first of all, it was Elvis. When I was a younger kid, it was Elvis, and then when
Van Halen's pretty
first time I heard Eddie Van Halen, I was like, "What is that?" And of course, I can't play anything like Eddie Van Halen. But, I will find myself on my car listening to Sirius XM Hair Nation a lot. And so I have to purposely get away from Hair Nation so I can listen to some other type of music. And
Randy Rhoads and Ozzy. Yeah, you like that?
Oh yeah, of course. I like Randy. Randy. I do like the Ozzy, but sometimes I catch myself flipping Ozzy, turning away from Ozzy and going to another channel. That's my precursor. I don't know about it, but I have this great T-shirt I picked up at the Iron Maiden, not Iron Maiden, Black Sabbath farewell tour a couple years ago. It just says, "Listen to Black Sabbath." I just like wearing it around. So I do like Ozzy, but I tend to like the Black Sabbath stuff more than the.
Oh yeah, his Sabbath stuff is more iconic. Yeah, it's definitely. Well, I just love like genre bending, because the idea that people get stuck in lanes, and I just like to see it when people cross pollinate from different genres. So you take a little psychedelic and you throw it into hip hop, you get something like a De La Soul, or you take some punk aesthetic and you mix it up and you get like a Talking Heads, which is something that's not punk, but kind of came from punk.
Yeah.
It came from the idea that punk aesthetic that you don't have to be Yes. You don't have to be Zeppelin. You don't have to be the Who. You could do something else. you could come from a different point of view. And I always thought that was like, it's incredible the directions that you can go if you're willing. And I've always been a big promoter of emerging and independent artists. That's why I started the podcast. I primarily talked to emerging and independent artists that I didn't feel were getting paid attention to. And that was the point of the show initially.
And you talk about that, divergence and stuff. The ironic thing is that, well-established artists and bands get hammered for doing that, right? Because their fan base likes, the genre of A or whatever. This is what I fell in love with. Now all of a sudden you're giving me, maybe not even tangentially B, but it's already jumped to C, D, or E or something like that. It's like I don't get that, And so it's cool when you discover, a band has put that together. My son, when he was a kid, he wanted to take up violin, and he wanted to play it with ska music. And I'm like, they do that? And he's like, yeah, they do that. And I'm like, oh, well, that's pretty cool, And so he messed around with that for a little while. But I do like it when people, think about like, hey, wouldn't it be cool if we just added, this and that, and it's something that you wouldn't think of ordinarily. The didgeridoo, right? I've never yet added that. I have one, but I haven't really figured out how I want to implement that into some of the things that we've been doing lately. But it's always kind of cool to think about what's some different sounds, different tones, different rhythm.
Bring Eastern influence. The Beatles are famous for bringing the Eastern influence, and then progressive rock. Timing changes, classical and funk. Like if you get you got funk, classical, psychedelia, rock, all happening.
Yeah.
At the same time. And so then you can kind of go any direction you want. You can make something that's a hit, like a 4-minute, 3-minute song, or you can do a whole album side. That's like this 20-minute kind of Pink Floyd, early Pink Floyd. That's like Sid Barrett, Pink Floyd. It's not the wall Pink Floyd. It's different.
And I think that's an important consideration for any artist, right? Is what's your motivation for doing it, right? And it has to be true to yourself to begin with. And you might not have there might not be a commercial appeal to it, but are you producing things that resonate internally to you? And audiences can understand when it's not authentic, right? And so what are you trying to do? And then I love the example that you just gave a little while ago about putting something out and getting a reaction from people. There's a Bay Area artist who I admire. His name's the Fantastic Negretto. He's a Grammy award-winning blues artist. He came from an R&B background in his earlier career, but when he was, beginning to perform under the name of Fantastic Negretto and writing blues, he would go down to outside the BART station, the train station, the trains that go around the San Francisco Bay Area, and he would play for people getting on and off the train, recognizing that if you stop people on their commute, and see their heads turn and listen, and maybe if people stopped and hung around for a little bit, then he was maybe onto something. And that was
something.
That's how he got his feedback, right? It's like, is this just something I'm doing for myself, or is this something that people that there might be an audience for, that people might want to hear more, and it helped them kind of refine his sound. Next thing you know, he's got a Grammy. So it's great to get it out there. But it starts from your soul, your heart, and what appeals to you, what resonates with you, what comes from inside.
Because you got a lot of passion for writing in itself with the Steelers story, and then you've gotten into other things where you've done a lot of writing that's parallel to your music. You just have this sense of creativity. But like, seems like music is a big passion based on what I've heard from you so far. Mm-hmm. But where you seem like there's so many things hats you wear. Where's your primary focus today?
That's a great question. And right now it's kind of the written word, right? I have a book coming out. It's in the final stages of editing. It's called the Indy 500, a year-long quest to win the greatest spectacle in racing. It comes out from Morgan James Publishing in May of 2025. So super excited about that. I also want to try my hand at fiction. I've written 4 nonfiction books. I want to try my hand at fiction. One of the things I talked about, getting started. Anybody out there wants to write a book, just write a couple hundred words a day. In a half a year, you have a book, right? So just do something. But my emphasis right now, Keith, on the writing, the written word and writing books is that it's taken me away from recording music. So I have a handful of songs that I want to record, but I don't have the budget for it and to do it professionally. So what I'm trying to do is carve some time out of my calendar. I hope to have done it earlier this month, and I haven't done it, but it is just recording simple, raw demos and taking the lead of, one of my heroes, Fantastic Negretto, and throwing it out there. I'm not going to do it at the BART station. I'm going to do it on streaming platforms and just show
throw it out on SoundCloud or something.
Yeah, this is my song. It's a demo. Do you like it? Is it?
Yeah, it's a good way to get like a beta reader. Like there's ways that you can kind of get an underground audience,
Mm-hmm. Well, I want to get the feedback. If I'm going to invest in having a producer produce it for me.
It's good to get that initial feedback.
Yeah, is it worthwhile? Or would somebody else like to produce it for themselves? Do you like this song? And I can give it to you, and maybe you might want to record it and produce it. So I just want to get that music out there. But you ask a great question, and it's a bit of a turmoil for me, a conflict, because these are things I want to do. I'm focused on punching a day in the face, if not now, when. I have this music I want to get out, but I'm also been tied up in
there's
this.
A lot of production that goes into music. There's production that goes into a book, but I think once you've written books and you've already got agents and you're in that process in the pipeline, it's probably like a more, like you've got a flow there that once you get it done, you can get it out.
You have a flow and you can get it out, but the thing with books that takes a lot of time is that the writer is ultimately responsible for the promotion and marketing of the book, right? Mm-hmm. You look at a very big publishing company, Simon and Schuster or something. They might do 20,000 nonfiction books a year. They can't promote, but 50. Realistically,
authors are doing their own work.
Yeah, they can promote, realistically, probably about 200, probably about 4 a week, right? And they'll certainly take those. If you're Michelle Obama, they'll certainly do that one. That's got that. But for a Ray Hartjen, I've got to promote and market my own book. And that just takes, working your social platforms, making these relationships, establishing relationships with folks, and and working the community. Next thing you know, you can spend
that's a job in itself. It's like a PR in the air. That's a job in itself. Like if you're trying to do music, is its own job in the same way. It's the same type of thing you have to do.
Mm-hmm. For decades we had not even decades, but more than that, we had the street team, right? Street team would go out and with your music, whether it's in cassettes, remember the cassettes, and then putting the signs up, the posters and all that for
radio
gigs,
stations. They different markets would play in Detroit, Chicago, Boston. You could get certain DJs to play. Like certain things.
All you need is one. John Bon Jovi can tell you that. You just need one.
One of those DJs to play your song.
Yeah. And So, with books and with music, now it's the digital street team and empowering them to be able to go out.
Yeah, to get on the right playlist, get in the right blog, get on the right TikTok feed. Like you gotta hit it from so many angles.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, I gotta learn about TikTok. I gotta learn about Reels. I gotta learn about this. I gotta learn about Mixcloud, SoundCloud, and all these places I could send it to, and different editors and bloggers that if you get on their right side, then you can get the buzz. Mm-hmm. So it's like trying to figure it out and being out there.
and it's juggling that time. Once you're into the administrivia of a public relations person or a marketer or promoter, what you definitely aren't at that point in time is a creator.
Yeah, you
right?
spend
You
all
know,
your
so
time doing that.
when you're working to, get on a podcast or a blog or what have you, what you're not doing is tickling the ivories with your
You're not
fingers.
writing a song.
Writing music, right? And I sent out 5 copies of my book today to heads of drug companies. This book is my cancer patient memoir. It's called Me, Myself, and My Multiple Myeloma. It's a fundraiser that I have for the Multiple Myeloma Research Foundation. All my net writers proceeds go to there, and I'm looking for ways to just spread the word, the brand, if you will, the awareness of the book. And so I sent it out to heads of drug companies that make drugs that I take, and that perhaps one day your wife will take. And just looking up who the person is and the company it is with this myriad of subsidiaries and so forth, the people who develop drugs. It took about an hour to
do research, to find a person, get their address, to figure out where to send it.
Exactly. For 5 books, took an hour to put all that together, and then of course I had to run over to the post office. But that's an hour that I didn't get a chance to record this song that I want to record, this demo for a song called The Weekend. So that maybe this weekend I will carve out just a bit of opportunity, plug everything in, and get that out there. When I do, Keith, I'll be sure to send the link to you, and you can give me your honest feedback whether you like it or not.
Well, that's cool. Yeah, I love to listen. I listen all the time because that's like, as an artist, I'm a fan. So I listen to so many things. Just to get, not that I'm going to clone other people, but I like to have my finger on the wind to see what's kind of going on. Not that I'm going to actually do what's going on now, because I'm a big fan of like Lou Reed and the Velvets and Alex Chilton and Big Star, and those aren't big today. But I'm still inspired by stuff like that. So I'm kind of going at, it's like, I like that feel of the early Velvet Underground records, or the feel of Alex Chilton and Big Star and his early records. And, those weren't big records, but a lot of producers and a lot of musicians heard those records and were inspired by them. And then maybe that's, well, why do you like these like unknown bands? Well, I like the direction they had, because seemed like they were doing it because they had a dream. They had a vision, and it didn't win, but the vision was still good. Yeah. So I always like those stories, because it kind of shows me like, maybe in your time you're not known, but in another time you are.
Yeah. And you also live forever in what you've influenced, right? You take a heavy band like Anvil. I don't know if you're familiar with Anvil. Yeah. That great documentary that was made on them, maybe 10, 12 years ago. But you see, they live forever in the influence of the heavy bands that came behind them. Anvil never really made it big
themselves,
right?
Like
themselves.
Velvets, like the Velvets of that type of, the Velvet Underground is like the example of like the band that influences all these other bands but never really made the money.
Yeah.
Because like Lou Reed goes like, all these bands, all these people said they love me. I wish they would have paid me. I think it was a quote where he said that. It's like, it's great that all these people say they love it. It's like, I never saw the money.
Love is good, but it doesn't put groceries on the table.
It didn't pay the bills, but when it comes to the NASCAR, are you a NASCAR fan? How did you get involved in writing the NASCAR book?
Actually, it's not a NASCAR book. It's an IndyCar book. Indianapolis 500 is an IndyCar book. And
IndyCar. But were you a big Indy fan?
I am, and I will give you the reason why. This is the reprint of the book. You remember way back when we were kids, I think they still have it today. I'm not sure. But remember the Scholastic America catalog? I
used to get everything from Scholastic. I was one of those kids buying that stuff all day.
Yeah. So, your teacher would give you these little paper thin catalog, these super thin pieces of paper you could see through.
Everything I could get.
And it's like, wow, I want to, you go home and you beg mom and dad for like $1.10 or whatever. I got this, I was probably maybe 3rd or 4th grade. I got a paperback book written by an author by the name of Hal Higdon. It was called The Indy 500, 30 Days in May. And it was a daily chronicle of the 1970 Indy 500. And I got this book, like I said, probably around 3rd grade or so, probably around 1973. And I was captivated by the book. I thought this is the coolest thing ever. I read that book multiple times a year for at least a decade, and I just became, that book ignited a passion for me in the Indy 500. My father was a career military officer. And when I was in high school, actually, when I was in 8th grade, he got stationed to Indianapolis. There was a post on at the time called Fort Benjamin Harrison. So we actually got to move to Indianapolis when I was like 13 or something like that, and I got to go actually see the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. I got to see cars. First it was practice and the qualifications and the race, and that, if I wasn't already in love with it, then I was in love with it now. Now, the Indy 500 is not for everybody, but it is a sensual overload, right? There's the sights, the sounds, you feel it. You can practically taste it. It's
engines, the roar.
The roar of the engines. It's sensory overload for some people, and it's not for everybody. But I tell people you should check it out once. It's like the Kentucky Derby or whatever.
I used to go to Lime Rock, and I like to watch the sportsmen, Sports Cars America Club take their like street cars, take the 911s and the Ferraris and the Aston Martins and the MGAs, and I would go with my uncle and we watch them.
Yeah,
I would just love to see that. Because it's like, I could go, because I lived near Connecticut, so I could go to Lime Rock and I could watch that. Yeah. And I could see all these, and like I was into 911s, I was into Alfa Romeos and into Ferrari, and was into all those cars. So I was like, I actually like seeing those because that was kind of my thing.
Me too. I had a 911 for a number of years. I used to take it out to, as part of the Porsche Club of America, take it out to Seattle International Raceway and drive around. It wasn't racing, but it was driving fast on a road circuit. It was great. But that book ignited a passion in me. I've been a ticket holder at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway for the Indy 500 for almost 40 years now, and I always wanted to update that book. The book that I read was a chronicle of the 1970 race, and practicing what I preach. If not now, when? I thought, what? If I'm going to redo this book, how about if I redo it for the 108th running of the Indy 500? The Indy 500 that was just ran on May 26th.
Oh, so you did it from that perspective.
Yeah. So my book starts from the last 2 laps of the 2023 race and goes all through the year to the 2024 race, and then ends at the victory celebration banquet the day after. So that's my homage to Hal Higdon, who later grew to fame for writing books about running marathons, and stuff like that. Yeah, he's had dozens of books about running, but the one that struck a chord in my heart was the car racing, the Indy 500 book.
That's interesting. Like how like you said, like sometimes writers, he wasn't pigeonholed to just writing about cars. He went to a different direction. So that's interesting. That that's, you never know where you're gonna go. But
I'm trying to follow his footprints. I've got a book about the Pittsburgh Steelers and the city of Pittsburgh. I've got a book about multiple myeloma. I've got a book about B2B sales and marketing, and I got a book about the Indy 500. So, and I told
you're not pigeonholed.
I'm not pigeonholing myself, and I've got this itch that needs to be scratched to try my hand at fiction. And so I read a lot of fiction, and I've got some ideas. I'm writing out. I just begun. I've actually got 2 fiction works in progress. But one that I've been spending time on recently. So I'm trying not to pigeonhole myself, trying to get it out there.
Do you find anybody gives you advice and says you shouldn't do that?
Not yet.
As diversified as that?
Not from a writing books perspective yet. I anticipate that. There's always that. There's that kind of that saying. I don't know who said it. I think it might have been Stephen King. It's write with the door closed, edit with the door open. So there's a lot of feedback. With using an editor and getting things done. No one said stay in your lane, and this isn't your lane yet. But I anticipate that coming. I think feedback is a gift, right?
Yeah,
feedback's not going to stop me from what I'm doing. Like, particularly when it relates to music, I'm pretty certain I'm never going to be like a million streamer on Spotify with my music. Right. Yeah, whether it's in a band or if it's as a solo artist, I'm doing it for me. And I've
You're
had
doing it
people
for
say
fun. Yeah,
that.
you're doing it like it's a passion project. Like a lot of what I do, it's totally because I just want to do it the way I have a vision for what I
Mhm.
want to do. And somebody could tell me, look, well, that's not what's hip, but that's not, well, that's not where I'm at.
Yeah.
Where I'm at is where, what I'm doing right now. And
You know,
because,
and I do it for myself. I put my first ever solo single out 4 years ago. It's a song called "We the People." I was just inspired by that in the summer of 2020. This collective introspection we were doing as a country. Like, where are we? What are we doing? Right? And I kind of like harken back to my punk roots, and it's 2 minutes and 9 seconds. A short little kind of like punk infused song. And I had friends, it's like, what are you trying to say with this and all this? It's like, hey, first of all, I'm not writing it, what you're not going to change my mind about this and that and that. And I'm like, you know what? It's not about changing your mind. This is an expression of my belief. If I was a painter, it'd be me painting something. I'm not painting it to sell to you. I am painting to get this out of me and to put it on canvas.
It's your cathartic exercise. Like every artist that, like I look at Joe Strummer and the Clash. Like you could either be into whatever the politics of the Clash were, but it's like, I like the passion of the Clash. I like what Joe Strummer was doing from like a passion exercise, because he really believes it, right? So when I see somebody that has that kind of love for what they're doing, then it becomes infectious. It's like, well, yeah, I'm listening to London Calling. I'm like, yeah, like you might not dig it, but a lot of critics looked at it and say, well, this is really vital because he's really hitting this note, and he's not the best tonal singer in the world. And Dylan wasn't either, but it's how he was delivering it.
Yeah.
Right. It's kind of like the point is like, you don't have to have perfect pitch to actually get it across.
Yeah. And I'm not comfortable as a vocalist. But when I do stuff as a solo artist, I do have to do it. And hey, I don't have perfect pitch. I don't have even close to perfect pitch. And even some of the meds that I take affect my voice and makes it more hoarse. But maybe that makes it better. So what I can tell
your individual voice is kind of like your secret sauce. I always tell people, it's like you could try to be like this great voice, he's never gonna be Marvin Gaye. But there already was a Marvin Gaye. It's actually like sometimes it's better for a singer-songwriter to sing their own song because the way they sing it carries off their emotion because they lived it. That's their story. That's their idea. If they just give it to somebody with perfect pitch, like sometimes they would lose what the meaning really was because it's not coming from the source.
Yeah, and I think sometimes we lose that, particularly the younger audiences, because of these voice shows, right? Like The Voice,
it's all about the voice.
So it's like and then you always see people too, like I'm going to do a Whitney Houston song. It's like, what? Why are you going to do that? Why do you want to be compared to maybe the best singer ever? Well, then when you get in your you listen to other music and you just hear a person sing, but they sing with that authenticity and that integrity. It's not perfect, but you're like, this is it. Louis Armstrong would have never, he wouldn't have been sent to Hollywood on American Idol. But
tons of artists. There's a lot of famous, singers that don't have like the best, like Neil Young. Like Neil Young, you either hate him or you love him, but when he's with Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young, he can actually harmonize. But then with the Crazy Horse, he'll actually do this kind of shaky pitch. Yeah, it's very punk. He's like the godfather of punk because he'll do this stuff that's really, it's not perfect. It's imperfect on purpose. And it's like there's nothing wrong with that. But there was a belief that you couldn't do that. But then people like him started doing it. It's like, you can have a song like Tonight's the Night. You can have a song where you're not, technically, vocally, sonically perfect, but you're actually carrying off a lot of emotion.
And not just the Godfather of punk, Godfather of grunge too, right?
All
the grunge bands idolize little Neil Young. Yeah.
I mean, it just inspired like the grunge is like the reawakening of punk.
Yeah.
So like he influenced the Clash and they influenced Nirvana,
Yeah.
and you know, Stone Temple Pilots and Pearl Jam and Alice in Chains and all those guys. They brought it back because
Yeah.
Crazy Horse was never went away. Crazy
Mhm.
Horse was always playing,
Yeah.
and it was like, oh, why don't we call that energy back? And then boom, we bring it back.
You know, I had the pleasure of living in Seattle during the time that Sub
Sub
Pop
Pop
took off,
Revolution.
and all those bands came out, and it was a really cool time to be in the Pacific Northwest. These great bands, like Candlebox, for example.
Yeah,
And
Sub Pop had all these bands. It's like
yeah,
Nirvana wasn't. Yeah, they just. And I was listening to all those bands before they broke. I was listening to the bands like Husker Du and Black Flag. I was listening to all this kind of post-punk, punk aesthetic type of stuff that was going on, like the Replacements, Paul Westerberg, all
yeah,
that stuff I was listening to anyway.
yeah.
And then Sub Pop came about and said, "Oh, here's this scene, the Seattle scene, because Minneapolis had a scene,
Yeah.
Detroit had a scene. Like there's a scene like everywhere. There's all these little punk scenes, and I was like following them all. And then Seattle kind of blew up and kind of supplanted all these other ones. But it's
Yeah.
like these other cities were doing the same type of thing.
Mhm. Yeah, you just say Minneapolis. That's a Husker Du place, wasn't it?
Yeah,
And,
Husker Du. Yeah,
yeah, and yeah, it's
Bob Mould,
yeah,
Ray Hart.
it'd be cool to get in like an old square body pickup truck and just take this meandering like a 3-month long road trip to different spots and just immerse yourself into like the regional hyper local music
Local
scene.
scenes.
Yeah, what's going on in Santa Fe, New Mexico these days? And
There's little underground scenes everywhere, and I mean, I pick them up in like Amsterdam, Berlin, Ireland, UK, parts of China, Tokyo. You know, I actually lived in Tokyo, and there was sections of Shibuya where these punk bands were playing just as like sound like Sub Pop type stuff. They were being influenced by us,
Mhm.
and then taking the Japanese perspective and doing it. So I was always like, wow, this is really cool
Yeah.
to see how far this stuff goes, because it was like in Iceland, Netherlands. It's like it's everywhere. Like, and so you might not see it here, but then it's over there.
Yeah.
You know, it's just cool to just I think people should explore as much as they can, because like you shouldn't be limited by your location.
No, you shouldn't be limited by your location. Shouldn't be limited by your socioeconomic background, your geopolitical views, or whatever. It's like you said. You listen to the Clash or whatever. It's like hold on a second for like politics or anything like that, but just listen to the music, right? And then if something comes a little different, find out more about it. Just not stop at a headline. Don't stop at just the stuff that Yahoo News is feeding you because you've always clicked on the same stuff from Yahoo News or whatever. Don't just read Republican stuff because you're a Republican or Democratic stuff because you're a Democrat. Expand your mind.
Be willing to kind of be a critical thinker.
Yeah.
Because when I went to college, is like I'm a liberal arts major, but I was like, political science, sociology, and then I got into computer science. But one thing it did teach me is how to learn.
Yeah.
And in my job, I have to learn all the time. I do, went from COBOL mainframe to blockchain to now I'm getting certified in AI, right? So I'm doing like every time in the industry I'm in, I have to relearn. I have to be a student, or you get replaced.
Yeah.
So it's just the nature of the work is it's exponential. The technology shifts. And so in order to progress, we have to learn. So it's not a choice of like, oh, I don't want to do it. It's like, well, you kind of have to do it.
Yeah, and it's going back to the way we started out our hour, right? Talking about that growth mindset, and it's something happens to us, and I don't know where that age comes from, but once we start thinking we know everything. So I'm going to say teenage years. I know everything, right? Even though you're not even close to knowing everything, but you feel like I know everything, and you kind of put that pursuit of growth away, and if we all just took a step back and acted like a beginner again, asked questions and listened and just kept our eyes open. And, you have that sense of wonderment and learning that we
Willingness
all
to
enjoyed
know,
as a kid.
what you don't know. Like a part of like our magic in our software is like we have to be willing to admit what we don't know
Mhm.
and what we have to learn and
Yeah.
do iterative development because it's not going to be perfect, but we can fix it with .1, .2, but .3, .4, .5.
Yeah.
So since we do iterative development, our design is never done because anything that comes in the future we can actually handle and release a update.
Yeah.
And so it's a growth mindset in this agile kind of mindset. It's like I can keep on doing iterative development till the whole foundation shifts.
Yeah.
And right now we're in the middle of a foundation shift, like from like artificial intelligence shift is in blockchain structures are changing the old IT structures. And so there's a lot of like foundational shifting going on,
Yeah.
but you still have to have some core knowledge and be willing to say, hey, I don't have to be replaced. I can
Mhm.
use that business knowledge and then apply the new techniques, and they still need to know that foundational knowledge to implement the new stuff.
Yeah. And where I am, it's a test and learn. I'm a content creator, right? And it's testing and learning, putting things out to your targeted audience, gauging their reaction, their engagement, and continuously improving. Right. And it's, it's kind of the same mindset with the iterative process from a software development perspective. I've spent the last 10 years marketing software and, and with, being, content around it. But just, hey, be willing to test and experiment, continuously learn, improve, and then repeat. It's a repeating cycle.
Rinse and repeat. That's what you got to do.
Yeah.
But it always comes by faster than we ever imagined. We hit our hour mark, but we do have RayHartjen.com as their URL, and that will be fully clickable for anybody that wants to click on that. In the description of the podcast, we've just been live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch. So if people click on that, I'm sure that's how they can get to your projects, right?
Yeah, you can reach me at my website. You can reach me on any of the social platforms at Ray Hartjen, and my email is rayhartjen@gmail.com. If there's anything I can do for you out there watching and listening, particularly as it relates to being someone that's going through a serious illness or chronic illness, let me know, because it's truly been the honor of my life to be able to reach out to patients, particularly cancer patients and multiple myeloma patients. And my contact information is in the books. Reach out to me, and I'm Ray Hartjen at all social platforms, with the weird exception of TikTok. I'm Ray Hartjen 5 on TikTok, and I don't know if I just got too fat fingered when I signed up or what, but you'll find me.
You'll find you though. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, have a good weekend. I do appreciate you being a guest on the Family Electric Coach podcast.
I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you so much. I love what you do, and it's been a thrill for me to be part of it. So thank you.
Thank you. Have a good night.
You too.